What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you another deck on Pokemon TCGO, and today I am bringing you an expanded deck centered around Decidueye and Vileplume. And for the more observant viewer, you'll notice that this deck is the list that was used by John Kettler in the, I forget which regionals it was. I think it was no, it wasn't St. Louis. I don't remember. He was used in regionals, and he got second place with it, so obviously very, very successful deck. And yes, I also know that I just did a deck around Decidueye yesterday, but like they say, there is no redundancy like redundancy. But actually, I'm doing another list around Decidueye because this deck functions very differently from the Espeon version of Espeon Decidueye, and also this is an expanded, so you know what? It's a different deck. And before I get into it, just a reminder that if you guys like this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and click that subscribe button. Helps us out a ton and lets us do more cool stuff for you guys. And as for the question of the day, kind of just a generic one. What is your favorite grass type starter? Now, I mean, I'm saying that because Decidueye is in this deck, and obviously it is the Gen 7 grass type starter. I want to know what your guys' favorite is. Now, to be honest, grass types have kind of gotten a raw deal. A lot of people think that they are the worst of these starters. I mean, depending on what gen you're in, but overall, people generally pick the fire starter. The fire starter is the most just kind of popular. The water starter is usually the most useful because it learns like surf, waterfall, dive, all of those useful HM moves. And then the grass one is just kind of like, guys, I'm here too. Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? But yeah, the grass types kind of get a bad rap, but overall, I think they're actually pretty useful, and some of them have had quite a bit of success in the competitive scene. But as for me, my favorite grass type starter, what would that be? Probably it would have to be Torterra. And I know that that's a very unusual pick because, okay, there's grass types that have had a ton of success in the TCG. I mean, you have Superior, you have in OU with its Contrary Leaf Storm, you have Venusaur being one of the biggest threats in the entire Gen 5 metagame, and then Mega Venusaur in Gen 6. You have, I guess that's overall about it in terms of the grass types viability. But I mean, either way, a lot of grass types have had quite a bit of success. But I still like Torterra simply because it gets Earthquake by level up. I mean, plain and simple, Torterra gets Earthquake by level up. And that thing was so useful in quite a few scenarios, like just being able to be like, okay, I evolve into Torterra, I have Earthquake. So Torterra is my favorite grass type starter. I rambled way too long. Let me know who your guys' favorite grass type starter is and why. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. But anyway, like I said, deck centered around Decidueye and Vileplume, and by now, you guys know what these do. I've done plenty of decks around Decidueye, I've done plenty of decks around Vileplume, and these guys together just make one of the most potent combinations in the entire expanded and standard metagame. And what's kind of funny, I was looking at this list, there's only 3 cards from expanded in the entire list. Okay, to be fair, the Oddish and Gloom are from expanded, but we only use those because they have the water resistance, which, I mean, we can definitely just substitute the other Oddishes in without much of a problem. But really, this deck only has 3 cards from the expanded format with Xerosic, Computer Search, and Jirachi. Those are the only 3 that it has, and it still was able to get top 2, and I believe it was a regional. Honestly, I'm so wrong on a lot of stuff. If it wasn't a regional, I apologize, but I do know this was by John Kettler, and he lost to a Mega Rayquaza deck in the finals, but still super, super successful deck, and a very, very powerful one at that. So, I mean, honestly, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the numbers of the Pokemon and why. Just because, I mean, you guys know, Vileplume item locks, Decidueye Feather Arrows, you rely on these abilities to just lock your opponent out while you continually just like drop 20 damage and then occasionally 90 if you are able to Razor Leaf. So that is really the whole goal of this deck. We are running 1 Lugia as a non-Decidueye attacker because, I mean, Glaceon would give this deck quite a hard time because the combination of Rough Seas, healing the damage from Feather Arrow, and the fact that it cannot be damaged by Razor Leaf from Decidueye would cause quite a few problems, so having Lugia there is a good backup attacker, and also Lugia is just a nice starter in general, because you slap a DCE on it and all of a sudden you're just hitting for 40 at the very least if your opponent has no energy, and if they try to power something up, Lugia just gets stronger and stronger. So a very, very solid attacker in this deck. We are running 3 Shaymin because, I mean, you need the draw support. The goal of this deck is to get a turn 1 Vileplume and a couple Decidueye up. Shaymin is necessary for being able to draw those extra cards without your supporter so that you can get the turn 1 item lock and a couple Decidueye up. So yeah, 100% running 3 Shaymin for that extra draw support when we need it. 2/2/2 of Oddish through Vileplume. Just, I mean, have consistent lines where we're not susceptible to these guys being in the prizes, but not too heavy to where it clunks up the deck. And then 4/4/4 of the Rowlet through Decidueye. Main attacker, rely on the ability, all that. So we want to have as many of those as possible. And 1 Jirachi, be like, well, I need one. I just need a supporter for this turn. So play down Jirachi, get that N or the Lysandre or the Sycamore, really whatever you need in the current situation. Jirachi can get you supporter-wise. However, I found myself actually not playing Jirachi in a match quite a bit. However, it is way too useful in too many scenarios to just forego completely. As for the items, Computer Search, get you that extra puzzle piece when you need it. Definitely this over Dowsing Machine, because Computer Search is just like a, oh, I need this one piece from my deck. And also, you're going to be using Computer Search turn 1. Dowsing Machine is if you want to have your A-Spec be more useful later in the game. Computer Search is a early game, I need this, and this deck is very much an early game setup deck, so Computer Search 100% necessary. As for the Search, 2 Level Ball and 4 Ultra Ball, just get what we want when we want, and also the discard of Ultra Ball is mitigated a little bit in this deck by Revitalizer. We can just like discard a Gloom and a Vileplume to grab a Rowlet or Dartrix or whatever we need, and then later we can just Revitalizer those things back into our hand. It's like, oh, well, they're right back here. So Revitalizer mitigates the discard from Computer Search, Sycamore, and Ultra Ball a little bit. Not completely, but enough. 4 Trainers Mail to help with consistency. 4 Ultra Ball get us what we want when we want. 4 Forest of Giant Plants so that we can evolve first turn and get that very, very consistently. We want to have a Forest of Giant Plants in our starting hand, or at least almost, well, actually we want a Forest of Giant Plants immediately so we can play that down and start evolving all the grass evolutions that we have in our hands. As for these supporters, 4/3 of N and Sycamore, we obviously do not run VS Seeker in this deck due to item lock, so we're going to have to run a little bit heavier line of draw support, so an extra N is in there just for that. 2 Lysandre, because Lysandre is amazing and is very, very useful in this deck. 1 Xerosic. So if we come under a situation where we need to discard like a DCE or a Double Dragon from one of our opponent's Pokemon because they're locking us out as well, then that's what Xerosic is used for. Feather Arrow in itself is incredible, don't get me wrong, but by itself without any extra damage, it is just simply not enough to win a game. So we will have to attach DCEs at some point, and if our opponent is managing to lock us out of those with Giratina, then Xerosic is great for that. And then also, I mean, just really a lot of the attackers that give us problems, like Glaceon usually has a DCE on it, except in Water Box. Seismitoad, DCE. I mean, a lot of things run on special energy. Xerosic is great for just discarding that. Only running 2 Float Stone in this deck, and one thing that I always tell viewers when you're running a Vileplume deck, never play down a Vileplume until you have a Float Stone on it. This deck is the exception. This is the only exception, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, but this deck is the only exception because, I mean, if Vileplume's active, you still have damage that can be placed with Feather Arrow. Usually in the other decks, you have Vileplume combined with something else to where the attacker has to be active in order to attack because, obviously, I mean, it's in the name, the attacker. However, in this deck, if your opponent Lysandre's up a Vileplume and it doesn't have a Float Stone on it, that's not necessarily bad for you because you can still place damage around with Decidueye. Your opponent is focusing down a 1 prize Pokemon, which throws off the prize trade as well because all of our other Pokemon are 2 prizes. I mean, admittedly, you have to have a Rowlet up into a Decidueye before it becomes a 2 prize, but either way, it's a 2-prize attacker, so your opponent is focusing on a 1-prize Pokemon, which throws off the prize math for them. You are still able to Feather Arrow and knock out and damage your opponent's Pokemon, and Vileplume is bulky enough to where it's not going to go down in one attack, so you just have multiple, essentially free turns of Feather Arrowing while your opponent focuses down the Vileplume. And oh, once they knock it out, you have access to items again to where you can, odds are, get another Vileplume going almost immediately while you have a turn of items. So I know I always say never play down a Vileplume until you have a Float Stone. This deck is the only exception. You are able to play down a Vileplume without a Float Stone, however I still highly recommend playing a Float Stone onto it, but you can definitely sacrifice the Float Stone on Vileplume to get a turn 1 item lock on your opponent. So yeah, only 2 Float Stone because it's nice, but it's not super necessary. And then 4/4 of DCE and Grass Energy, just because, I mean, DCE, Lugia, Shaymin, Decidueye, Grass Energy, Lugia, Shaymin, Decidueye. So pretty simple in terms of the energy that we are running in this deck. So yeah, I have rambled for way too long. Let's go ahead and see this deck in action. Alright, we found one against Ivan T. Houts? I don't even know. I actually, you know, I kind of like Ivan T. Houts. I just like it when people include their middle name in their username. I don't know why. I think it's kind of funny, even though it's really not that funny. But just humor me, guys. So we do lose the coin flip. I'm curious to see what my opponent is running, because we saw grass, we saw psychic, we saw water and normal, and I do mulligan. So my opponent is going to see what I start. However, I mean, I figure he can kind of assume based on the makeup of my, based on the type makeup of my deck. And all right, we're mulliganing again. My opponent knows I'm running Decidueye and Forest of Giant Plants, and I do start with Rowlet. Actually, not the worst start. It's actually kind of almost, it's a pretty decent start in all honesty. Because Rowlet, you either want to start with Rowlet or Lugia. Actually, you just really don't want to start with Shaymin. Like, that's, you just don't want to start with the Pokemon whose effects you get when you play down. And my opponent, ooh, does have the Mewtwo. So I need to be, well, I guess then again, if he just plays a DCE and Muscle Band, it'd knock my Rowlet out. So I need to get this guy, I need to worry about Rowlet and not have it, you know, just get blown back turn 2 by a DCE plus a Muscle Band. And thank the Lord we are not playing in the old expanded format. Of course, the door rings right as I'm starting to record too. Good. It's either the phone or the door. I honestly have no idea at this point. But either way, I mean, I am off to a pretty, well, I mean, I'm not even off to anything at this point, because my opponent is playing, are we against, yeah, okay, I think we're against Honor Stoice. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to play against Honor Stoice. I mean, honestly, if my opponent can't get the turn 1 Blastoise, then we are screwed. Otherwise, we are just in such an amazing position. Like, just overall, the matchup is so ridiculously in our favor, because once we get the item lock, my opponent is going to have a ton of trouble getting a getting in Archies or anything like that. Like, he's going to have trouble one-shotting a Decidueye to begin with. And in return, we can one-shot a Keldeo and then target down like the Jirachis and the Shaymins with Feather Arrows. So this matchup is insanely in our favor. Heck, even the Mewtwo can't even do too much, because while it can hit us with X-Balls for about 100 damage, I mean, assuming 2 energy on him and 3 energy on us, and then if the Muscle Band, that's like 120. I mean, that's a 2-shot, but, I mean, Feather Arrows plus Razor Leaf are going to do more than enough to my opponent to where we're able to win the game. My opponent actually is not able to get off a turn 1 Archies. Does get rid of the, oh, he's gotten rid of 2 Superiors, an Execute, and a Jirachi. So if we can get the turn 1 Vileplume, my opponent is not going to be able to do much of anything, because the only way Honor Stoice is going to be able to, well, the only way Honor Stoice would have any chance in this matchup is if he got the turn 1 Blastoise, or I'm not able to get a Vileplume setup. But assuming ideal setup on both ends, the only chance he'd have is to get the turn 1 Blastoise immediately. And, yeah, so very, very interesting right there. I mean, I'm going to be in such a phenomenal spot against my opponent that he really won't be able to do much at all. And so brings out the Articuno. That is just fine. with me. Honestly, like, there's not much he can do, I don't think, overall. I am going to immediately Trainers Mail, grab that Ultra Ball, get a Forest of Giant Plants, get that thing into play, start going. Let's Trainers Mail again. Oh, I get a Computer Search, so I'm going to be able to pull off I'm pretty much guaranteed to be able to pull off a turn 1, at least Decidueye. And so what I am going to do is actually Computer Search, get rid of the Revitalizer, just to grab... What do I want to grab? Let's grab an Ultra Ball. Actually, do I want to grab the Ultra Ball? Maybe... What do I want to grab, guys? I don't know what I want to grab. I think let's just grab... You know what, let's just grab the Ultra Ball, be able to Ultra Ball for a Shaymin, play down the Forest of Giant Plants, play the energy onto the Rowlet, get rid of both the Sycamore and the N, to be able to Shaymin for a fresh 6 cards and just be like, okay, you know what, reset the hand, let's go from here. And yeah, let's see what 6 cards I get. Hopefully it's something I can work with, and that definitely counts as something I can work with. Let's go ahead and Trainers Mail, see what we can get. Ooh, we get a Level Ball. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and Level Ball, grab a Gloom, just because, I mean, even if this Rowlet gets knocked out, as long as I get a Vileplume set up turn 1, my opponent really can't do much. Like, if I get a Vileplume set up turn 1, then my opponent really just has no other outs to be able to get an Archie's, which is his only way of winning the game. So let's go ahead and Ultra Ball, grab that Dartrix, so I can get a turn 1 Decidueye and a turn 1 Vileplume. And I can't evolve the Rowlet. I was thinking of Dartrix when I grabbed the Rowlet, but I wanted to play the Rowlet down anyway. And then let's Shaymin for 5 cards. I mean, I have the Vileplume in hand. I could just go ahead and play it, but I think this is the better play anyway. And wow, I get another Dartrix. Let's go ahead and play that down. That way, if I draw into a... That way I can get another Decidueye up next turn. And I think this turn I'm just going to Hollow Hunt. I think that's the best play anyway. And I know 99% of the time I say do not evolve into a Vileplume until you have a Float Stone on it. But in this case, it's actually okay because of the setup that I have. Because particularly with Decidueye, you're still able to get 40 damage onto all of your opponent's mons. And if, I mean, worst case scenario, your opponent doesn't attack your Vileplume, you literally just draw pass until your opponent doesn't... Okay, but worst case scenario, your opponent Lysandres up the Vileplume and doesn't attack. Okay, worst case, you draw pass while continuing to spread damage around to all of your opponent's Pokemon with Decidueye. Best case scenario, your opponent just attacks into the Vileplume while you continually get that 40 damage out. And then, okay, your opponent knocks out Vileplume. All of a sudden you have access to items. You should be able to get another Vileplume up and going while you're able to use items for the turn, continue to Feather Arrow with Decidueye, and go from there. So in a lot of cases, like, I mean, I know I always say don't use Decidueye until, or don't go for Vileplume until you have the Float Stone. But in this deck, you actually don't mind it. I mean, it's not ideal, but it really isn't the worst thing in the world. What I am going to do right now is just get rid of that Muscle Band on Mewtwo. Just kind of, yeah, make him attach another energy if he wants to hit for significant damage. And my Decidueye does have 200 damage on it, but at this point what I can do is just put an energy onto the Dartrix and then Sycamore away my hand. Hopefully draw into another Decidueye. Ooh, which I do. Meaning I can get a knockout on the Mewtwo with just Decidueye's Feather Arrow. So let's go ahead and Feather Arrow the Mewtwo once, and Feather Arrow the Mewtwo twice, take 2 prizes, and yeah, I mean, we're phenomenal position. I'm going to be able to either one-shot the Keldeo, put the Shaymin in range of being... Yeah, the Shaymin's going to get Feather Arrowed next turn for a knockout, and I mean, there's really nothing my opponent can do. Heck, even if my opponent Chilling Sighs and manages to keep me asleep, I can still spread around damage with Feather Arrow. Like, that's exactly what this deck is supposed to do. And yeah, I mean, there's just... I'm seeing why this deck was so powerful. Even in Expanded, like, the majority of these cards are available in Standard. But even in Expanded, just certain additions, like Computer Search and Jirachi, make this deck so much more, like, viable and powerful and all that. So, yeah, my opponent does go for the Chilling Sigh play. excellent recognition on my opponent's part that that was his only play. What I am going to do right here is I could take the knockout on the Shaymin. But if I know Honor Stories correctly, it does not use any, it doesn't use any DCEs. So I'm going to leave the Shaymin there as a prize that I can take whenever. If my opponent puts an energy on the Shaymin, then I'm just going to attack it, knock it out, and I mean, that's that, because I'm not worried about a Sky Return or my damage leaving the board, because like I said, they don't play DCEs, and that Shaymin's just a prize when I need it, and my opponent realizes that he can't do anything. Even if he continually Chilling Sigh locks me, well, I'm just going to Feather Arrow, take my prizes, and take the win from there. So, yeah, that was a very solid first match. Admittedly, we did have a ridiculous amount of advantage in that matchup, but either way, good first match. Got to show off exactly what this deck does. And let's go ahead and try to find another one. Alrighty, we found one against Reno. Holy crap. Reno with a bunch of numbers. It looks like somebody just head desked and smashed the keypad. Reno, 200,456,789. So apparently he's one of just a very, very long line of Renos. And we start off with, good lord, this hand could not be better. I honestly do not know how this hand could be much better. Because, I mean, I get a Lugia, a Rowlet, an Oddish, I have a Shaymin, I have a couple Trainers Mail. Like, that's very close to a perfect hand, like, if anybody had to ask me what I think. And we do see that we are up against a Turbo Darkrai with Tauros. This is going to be a tough matchup, actually. Because Darkrai do not go down in one hit. They spread around their energy. If my opponent can get a bunch of EXP shares into play turn one, then we are going to have a problem. Especially the fact that he started with Tauros means that I cannot just get little chip damage onto the Tauros without risking my Lugia just getting absolutely one-shot. So I have to be very careful about how I play. This whole matchup in general is a difficult one, but it's even worse right now for me, given the fact that my opponent starts with the Tauros. Like, Tauros was a pretty perfect start for my opponent. So apparently, I mean, I'm up against a deck, and this is exactly the type of games that I love. I love seeing matchups where two decks at their best are able to go at it. I don't necessarily like matchups where where one player is just able to completely destroy another and one player isn't able to draw into anything at all. So what I am going to do first turn, I mean, I just kind of segued immediately into this, but considering I just get everything I could want, I go ahead and get another Rowlet with my Level Ball. I go ahead and Shaymin, and okay. Let's see. I'm gonna Computer Search probably for a Forest, I think. I think the Forest is my best. Well, I mean, it's obviously my best play because I have a Decidueye in my hand. I have another Shaymin to be able to draw cards. I have an Ultra Ball to get a Dartrix immediately into a Decidueye, and I get a Gloom too, so that's even better. So what I can do is Ultra Ball, get rid of the Jirachi and the Grass Energy. I mean, I'm getting rid of a Grass Energy, but I should have enough energy in my deck to be okay. Grab a Dartrix to be able to get a turn 1 Decidueye, which, I mean, that's exactly what you want with this deck. You want a turn 1 Decidueye and a turn 1 Vileplume, and it looks like I should be able to pull that off. Admittedly, I did have to get rid of 3 Ultra Balls, but I mean, hey, that works too when I'm able to just draw into a Vileplume. So I do get a Level Ball. I'm able to grab another Dartrix. With that, Lugia's kind of just going to take a hit here. And once again, I think I'm just going to have to... You know, let's play it onto the Lugia. It changed into a Fire Energy again. What is with all my energy changing color recently? Throw 2 damage onto the Tauros. And then once again, I'm going to play a Vileplume without a Float Stone. Again, not ideal by any means at all. But, I mean, if my opponent knocks out my Vileplume, all of a sudden I get items for a turn. And if I get items for a turn, I should be able to set up another Vileplume in the process while being able to just continually Feather Arrow and keep my opponent locked out of items. So he will just Tauros, that's fine, Horn Attack me. I do luckily top deck an N, meaning I can get something else going. Not much apparently, because I just draw into a hand of no energy, which is unfortunate. However, I do get another Decidueye, meaning that I can start just spreading around more and more damage. Let's go ahead and Feather Arrow onto... I think... Do I want to start a Darkrai or the Shaymin? I think the Shaymin, just because, I mean, put 20 damage there, leave it in range of Razor Leaf later, and... Actually, no. Put the... I'm talking, but I'm talking, but it's not corresponding with what I'm doing. Lugia is going to take another 2 hits to go down. Like, that's... Unless my opponent gets, like, a... Actually, there's no way my opponent can knock out my Lugia in 1 hit right now because of the item lock. So, I will be able to take 2 prizes off the Shaymin. Hopefully, it will be something that I can work with. So, right now, the Shaymin is just... I have to go for it. I have to go for the Shaymin. I have to take a couple prizes off of that because what I have right now is just a whole lot of nothing, meaning that Shaymin, getting a couple cards off of that is going to be my only way of hopefully getting something going. And yeah, I'm just going to have to sacrifice the Lugia. The Lugia still did good. The Lugia did good. It got me some damage off on the Tauros. I mean, it didn't give me any damage off on the Tauros. It bought me a couple turns to set up a couple Decidueye. And yeah, now I'm just going to have to let the Lugia go down. My opponent goes to 4 prizes. I'm going to promote a Decidueye. Actually, do I want to promote the Vileplume and just kind of pray? No, I'm going to Decidueye. That way, if I draw into a Grass Energy, I can Hollow Hunt, which is exactly what I need. Let's play down another Rowlet. I can't afford to play down another Shaymin because I have already played down 2. Again, can't afford another one because that just would not be conducive to anything particularly useful. Get a couple prizes, and oh, I draw a Sycamore. That is gorgeous. So thank the Lord. I do have to get rid of a Decidueye in the process, but that shouldn't be too horrible. Get a Dartrix. That's pretty nice as well. And then what I can do is just... what do I want to grab in my discard pile? So I think what I'm going to do... Well, I'm obviously going to Hollow Hunt this turn. But what I think I'm going to grab is probably an N, a Decidueye. Well, no, Decidueye first, N and a Sycamore, just so I have options of draw supporters. I'm positively... Wow, I just stuttered so badly. I am 100% going to end this next turn because my opponent has too big of a hand. I want to put him down lower, but at this point, I think... So I'm going to get a 3rd Decidueye up, which is ideal for this deck. He is going to Lysandre. What's he Lysandering? He's Lysandering in the Vileplume. This is completely okay for me. Because, like I said, if my opponent knocks out my Vileplume, that's not a big deal. Or if my opponent Lysanders up... if my opponent Lysanders up a Vileplume, it's not a big deal, particularly because I have 3 Decidueye on the field already. And he's going to have to 2-shot the Vileplume at the very least. So what I am going to do is Feather Arrow the Tauros. I think I'm going to Feather Arrow it. So that's 60. I'm going to go ahead and... Do I want to do it another time? Or do I want to Lysandre or do I want to end? I think right now I'm going to Feather Arrow, target down the Darkrai with energy, just try to buy... try to set it up for a knockout in a little bit. And do I want to end or Lysandre? I think the play is actually to Lysandre in the Darkrai with no energy on it. Buy myself another turn of just going for Decidueye, of going for Feather Arrow with Decidueye, and like I said, this deck does not necessarily mind if Vileplume's active. My opponent is not able to 2-shot it. Yes, I do miss 2 attacks, but Feather Arrow is doing all the work I need. So I am just going to go ahead and play the Grass Energy onto my Decidueye. You know what? At this point, I'm just going to target down that Tauros. The thing with Tauros, I'm so scared of that Mad Bull GX, but what I am going to do is just, I'm going to go all out on it. That way, if my opponent has an energy, he can attach to the Darkrai, and then he'd have to Lysandre in a Decidueye to get a knockout with Mad Bull GX. But otherwise, well, I mean, even if he does that, then he's not taking out the Vileplume, so he wasted a Lysandre. I think that that's the superior play. My opponent is going to end me. That's fine. I was going to end him next turn anyway. If he draws a Darkness Energy, cool. Okay, yeah. I just get a free turn of items now. My opponent does Dark Pulse, knocks out my Vileplume. Well, guess what? I have 2 Decidueye completely powered up. I have another one that's still able to Feather Arrow. I'm just going to promote this Decidueye because why the heck not? And I draw an Oddish even. So I'm going to Oddish, Float Stone the Oddish. This is going to be the first time I'm hopefully going to get a Vileplume with a Float Stone on it. And then I even draw into a Revitalizer. So I'm going to be able to take a knockout on the Tauros with double Feather Arrow and then immediately get another Vileplume setup. So I mean that is why this deck is so powerful. It's so consistent. Like, you're able to just have such explosive turns. And then I'm going to Feather Arrow 3 times, knock out this Tauros, not have to worry about the do I want to just knock out the Tauros? Yeah, let's put 60 and then yeah, let's just knock out the Tauros. I don't want to have to worry about that Mad Bull being able to just come in and take a one-hit knockout. Darkrai is not one-shotting me, and at this point, even if he Lysanders up a Shaymin to try to stall or take some more prizes, that's not a big deal. This Darkrai now is 90 damage away from losing. That is just 2 turns of 3 Feather Arrows. That's all I need. I'm in a position to win the game regardless of what my opponent does. Heck, I can even Lysander in my opponent's other Darkrai on the bench to be able to knock that thing out. And my opponent does just Dark Pulse, damages my Decidueye. I'm just going to Feather Arrow just in case there's some magic -20 that I'm missing somewhere. And then Feather Arrow, knock out this Darkrai, and win the game. So, yeah, I even drawn to my last Decidueye. And if my opponent had knocked it out, I could have just Rowlet, Dartrix Decidueye. And, I mean, this is exactly why this deck is so powerful. Like, it's so consistent. And I know all the cards are available in Standard, but just a few cards here and there, like the Computer Search, the Xerosic, the Jirachi, make this deck so much more consistent and make this deck so much more powerful. So, even though I know that it's kind of a tiny bit scumbaggy to use Item Lock, very powerful deck that I would have been doing a disservice to the community to not show off. So congratulations, John Kettler, for having as much success as you did. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.